if you keep attracting the same types of people, the same types of relationships, the same types of things, it's because your unconscious mind is going, "Oh, I'm doing such a good job. I'm running this for them and I'm keeping them alive because here's the fun thing. We survived it. I'm doing such a good job." And so my work is to go back and have them change the story, change and learn what they needed to learn from it so they can let go of the decision that's not serving them.
Electricast. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. Today, I am delighted to welcome Suzanne Longstreet. She is master coach and creator of the Quantum You activation process, an unapologetic millionaire activator. She's the woman high-achieving women call when they're ready to drop the subconscious blocks, baggage, and remember who they are and build a business that feels prosperous and deeply aligned. Suzanne mixes neuroscience, one of my favorite things, positive intelligence, NLP, hypnosis, and quantum linguistics into this delicious mind-body cocktail that turns self-doubt into self-trust and sustainable revenue. She's the co-author of the best-selling book, The Millionaire Codes, The Secret Brain Science, Path to Supernatural Success, and her mission is helping women rewire their nervous systems so they can think clearly, act boldly, charge confidently, and lead with a whole lot more joy. Suzanne, I need you in my life. I'm so glad we are having this conversation today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. So, Suzanne, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
Well, I was in corporate for many years and I was in human resources and in financial services companies mostly. And my behavior got me fired. And I didn't know it at that time what it was. And people said to me, "Oh, it's because your boss was jealous of you," or it was this or it was that. And I now know with some hindsight and some reflection and deeper work that it has everything to do with the fact that I was not behaving appropriately in the business. My last role at a company was not a good fit for me. I had come out of the HR learning and development area to human resources learning and development, where you were encouraged to be a leader and think like a leader and come up with policies and processes and always look for solutions, into the pensions area, which was there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And we don't want any of this free thinking stuff. So, I can now see it's like, oh my gosh, one peg, square hole. I was not a good fit. I can really justify that. But also, I know that I was behaving erratically because I was triggered a lot. And when I was triggered, I was running something called post-traumatic stress. And because I'd had a history of abuse and trauma in a marriage. And so, yeah, it was a beautiful cocktail of what not to do and how not to behave. And so I had to go out and reinvent myself because I was left high and dry from this corporate role and I had to figure out the next evolution. And by the way, I was 41 years old when that happened. So just early 40s trying to figure it out. That's significant because it often happens around that age, doesn't it, Lisa?
It sure does. Yeah. I've had hundreds of conversations with humans at this point, and one of the consistent themes is you hit 40. For me, it was 45, where something has to change. I think that's what is underlying. Like, people hit that space of, I can't keep doing what I have been doing, and something has to change. And I hear my own story. It's not exactly the same, but there are definitely themes that are very similar. One of the things I was having a conversation for a podcast last week, and this came up, and then it was rolling around in my brain this morning. And it was that once you get to that stage in your life and your career, if you are in a role where you felt like this wasn't really a good fit, but you thought, I can change this. I can change this and I can make it fit me, which will make it better for other people. And then you hit that you've been in the career for 20 years and all the changes that you were trying to make have not come to fruition. And there is some big grief that comes along with that, as well as the realization of this institution is so much bigger than I am. And no matter what I do, I'm not going to change it. So it comes to, I'm either going to continue to let it change me, or I will be released, or I will release myself.
So true.
I was wondering, did you have some of that in your experience as well, where you realized, like, I have been trying for decades to make these changes and they just haven't come up?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I was fired in 2005, and then went and got a very similar role in another financial services institution. And 18 months later, was downsized and went, okay, is this because of my behavior? And they said, oh gosh, no, this job is actually legitimately being moved to Houston, Texas, unless you want to move to Houston. And I said, no, I'm good. I'm here. I'm happy in Canada. Thank you. And so then I left that, and they gave me a beautiful payout, and I was like, oh, and it was summer. So I thought, oh, I'll take the summer off. And I thought I'll start a coaching business because I had a newly minted coaching certification. So that was part of my thinking, well, it's not a really great fit, and I'll just downsize proof myself or fireproof myself by getting this certificate in coaching. The nice thing about a coaching certificate is that you can put it on your wall. But that's pretty much it, because it doesn't give you how to get clients, how to coach the clients when you have them in front of you. You just sort of go, well, I didn't know what to do. And because I had been running for my life, literally from the first marriage in the 90s, I was running post-traumatic stress, as I said, and I was also in fear for my life because he had threatened to kill me. And it exacerbated in my head, and it became bigger. I now look at it and go, dear me, I really made it a much bigger thing than it was. But in the dark, when I didn't put the light on it, it was a big monster in my head, and it stopped me. And I didn't even realize until years later what was actually stopping me. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I would just shove it aside and push it around and not deal with it, right? And started my coaching business finally after 5 years of flipping around and not doing anything. And things were going well, and I was making $40,000 a year, thinking I'm doing really well because the average life coach makes about 20,000, so I've doubled that. I wasn't paying the expenses or the bills. My poor husband, my new husband, at that point in time was carrying the burden, and that's not fair. And then finally, I started to sabotage relationships of people who were helping me, genuinely sending me clients. I was burning bridges with clients. I was sabotaging relationships everywhere, except for my husband. Thank goodness. He's a good soul, solid soul. And I thought, gosh, I'm doing it again. I got to figure something out. And that's when I found NLPs, neuro linguistic programming, and took the courses and realized I wasn't broken. There was nothing wrong with me. I was just running some programs that weren't serving me. And then I proceeded to learn how to help myself and help others. So to answer your question, what was happening is I was changing on the inside and changing my environment as well. And so as I changed, the environment had to change. As I leveled up, I got into a new environment and things changed even more for the better.
Thank you for sharing all of the depths of your story, because that I think is important and really informing where we are now. Right.
Mhm.
It's all of those pieces. And a lot of the time we don't have the perspective to realize it until we've got this much distance from it to be able to really look at, like, oh, yeah, that's why. Okay, I can see it now. And so when we can see it, what are some of the clues from our body that we can use, because one of the places I think people get stuck is they can see the patterns that are happening, but we have abandoned our bodies for so long that, one, we don't know how to feel the messages from the body, and then we don't know what action to take.
Mm.
So how do you help folks with that process, with identifying the pattern, getting back into the body, and then taking action?
Gosh, that's the work I do.
Yeah.
Beautifully stated. So the whole process is, first of all, having the conscious coaching, asking them the questions about what's going on, what are the patterns, what's not serving you, what happened to you, all of the. And then I ask them about events, significant emotional events, things that have happened for them or to them, however you want to look at it, and over their lifetime. And they start from childhood right through to whatever age they are. And we start to look at the patterns, and then I go underneath that and say, okay, let's pick one of these problems and let's find out what the root problem is. And then we go underneath that and we find out what's really going on in the unconscious mind. That's the root problem that's driving all of the problems, because the way that we call them presenting problems. So all of these presenting problems happen. It was like, oh, this, I never get into a relationship that I want, or this, or I keep blowing up relationships, or whatever's happening. And we just talk about all of that. And then people get to the root problem. And it's usually something like we've identified them as unworthy is one root problem. Unlovable is another. Powerless. And then the fourth one is not good enough. Now, I have heard other people say, well, I feel useless or hopeless or not valued. And so some of those usually tie into one of those big ones, but we'll take whatever, work with that. And then I'll look at them and I'll say, okay, so you've been running the pattern of, for example, unworthy your whole life. My gosh. Oh my gosh. I can see that I was running it. And that's why I did that when I was 6. And that's why I did this when I was 12. And this is why this happened when I was in my early 20s. And they could just see the path. And I call it the domino effect. You can just see everything going back. Oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Great. So now we've identified it, and then we go back to when the person made that decision. And this is where there is a little bit of resistance, because it's like, Suzanne, there is no point in time that I decided I was going to be unworthy. And I said, well, you did. And it was because of something that happened before you were 7 years old, usually, when you went, I don't even know how to deal with this. So I'm just going to make a decision and push it so far down. I don't even into my unconscious mind. I don't even know. I'm not going to deal with it. And then that decision that we made, that your unconscious mind is running to keep you alive, by the way, because it's the unconscious mind's purpose is to keep us alive and safe and protected. And then it runs the show, and it will create for you opportunities for you to realize that you are that decision, the unworthy or powerless or unlovable or not good enough, to prove to you that it's doing a good job. So if you keep attracting the same types of people, the same types of relationships, the same types of things, it's because your unconscious mind is going, oh, I'm doing such a good job for them. I'm running this for them, and I'm keeping them alive, because here's the fun thing. We survived it once, twice, thrice, multiple times. I'm doing such a good job. And so my work is to go back and have them change the story, change and learn what they needed to learn from it so they can let go of the decision that's not serving them.
Yeah, it's such big work, right? You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about what's mine. And there's, there are lots of things, but one of the things that really this moment that sticks out for me is, again, before I was 7 years old. When I was really young, I remember feeling just so excited to be in the world. And I have this picture of me where I'm wearing like the most 80s underoos ever and in a splash pool, and just this is the expression on my face. And I have some memories of what it felt like to be in that space. And then I was in grade 1 and I was walking down the hall of my school. And before that, I had been really lucky. Like I used to win things and all the time. And so I was in a contest, and we were called down to find out who the winner of this contest was. And I was walking in the hallway with this other girl, and she said, "So do you think you're going to win?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to win. I always win." And
Awesome.
she looked at me and she said, "That's the wrong way to think about it." And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, it's so much better to assume that you're going to lose so that you're not disappointed. And sure enough, I didn't win that contest. So there was this piece of evidence that was brought forward to me of like, she's right in my head. And from that moment on, there has been a duality in my thinking. And this is where I am in the muck of, I hold this duality of hope and thinking that things are going to go well. But then the back of my head always is, but assume the worst is going to happen so that you're not disappointed when it does. So there is never a time where this like hope and good can go forward without being yanked back.
Wow. That's so hard.
And
It's
it's
her opinion, her model of the world became your reality.
uh-huh. And I mean, it's not the most traumatic story in the world. It's not even that dramatic, but it has completely set up a pattern in my life that I am cycling through. So clearly, there also is something else underlying that, probably unworthy.
Or powerless.
Yeah, powerless.
Yeah, because you gave away your power in that moment.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if we were working together, what I would do is have you go back to that time and rewrite the story
Yeah.
where you went, that's your reality, but that's not my reality. And hands on hips and
Yes.
remembering that child that you were
Yeah.
and just make it happen. Shift the story.
Yes.
That's how fast it can be. It doesn't have to, like, this is the thing. This work is fast. We just shift it in the brain. We rewire the brain. The neurology shifts. It's like when the water flows, if you just change the course of the stream by putting a dam in it, all of a sudden the water will go elsewhere. The same with your neurology. It will change like that.
So that brings us to one of my very favorite things to talk about, and it is the intersection of neuroscience and quantum.
Mm.
And how those two things work together. So, what do we most need to be aware of what's happening with how our brains work? You know, as an educator, one of the most interesting things to me is how brains work. And so, knowing what is actually happening with our brains, the connection to body, and then what's happening with the quantum.
Yeah. And you realize too, like, okay, I love these techniques. I read scripts. I work with people. I'm listening to what they're saying. And I have chosen a field where they are the most work is being done to understand them. So the brain, how it actually works, and quantum, which is a new terminology that we started using about 100 years ago with Einstein's work. And so I'm still trying to figure it out. And even though I call it a quantum U activation, we're still trying to figure out how it all works. So how does it actually, in my view, work is that when we clear out the filters, because we have different filters. So we take in information. This is basic neurolinguistic programming. We take in information through our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, our feelings, what we feel, touch, smell, and taste. We take in all this information. It's 11 million bits per second. Now, that number has changed from 2 million to 11 million, and I've heard somebody say up to 18 million. So again, this is scientific light. It's coming in. There's some research that's supporting this. And so then we have to do something with all of this data that is pouring into our brains. And we filter it through our experiences, our language, our version of reality, our attitudes, our morals, our values, what's important to us, and something called meta programs. So we have all of these filters that it goes down through. And so Virginia Satir, who was a famous family therapist, she talked about this and she said, we have to take this 11 million bits of data and delete some, distort some of it, and generalize some of it for our safety and protection because we can't handle 11 million bits per second. So then what happens is we put it all into our bodies and we make meanings. So you and I might have the exact same experience, go to the exact same event, but would have totally different experiences of it. Just a quick little aside, I was doing my first training. I used to certify people in this process, neurolinguistic programming. And I remember we were in the purple room at a hotel near the Toronto airport. And I was sitting at the front and my students were all looking behind me. And so there was windows there and the wall behind my student was painted this beautiful amethyst purple. And she's looking at all these white walls. And she says, why do they call this room the purple room? And I said, turn around. She goes, she hadn't noticed it. So my experience was, this is a purple room. Her experience was, this is a white room that they called purple. That's a very simple little way of explaining we went to the same wedding, but you remember it totally differently. And this is how we get different conversations happening and often arguments, especially between spouses. No, that's not what happened. That's not what they said. That's not how, and we fight to be right, right? Okay, having said all of that, imagine all of these filters inside of us get gluey and gummy, and just like we have to take the car in to have the air filter change, you need to have this work done, I believe, because the more you can clear the filters so that whatever comes in will come in as pure as possible without those past experiences, negative experiences, meanings, things happening. And so that, I believe, is the work that we get to do on a regular basis, is just making sure that we're not triggered, not running an old pattern, not listening to the person, not looking at your husband and seeing your father in a bad day or whatever. It's just, you're just fully present. You're not running old stories in your head. You're not listening to those other voices of little girls or teachers or mom and dad or aunties and uncles. It's just clean, and you can just be fully present and listen in the moment.
So one thing we will come back to, I want to go back how it is that you experience the world. And then how that influences how you interact with other people.
Yes.
I know about myself that I am deeply auditory. That is how I process information from the world. When I listen to something, so if I'm out doing like shoveling the driveway, I think about this example because I was shoveling the driveway and listening to a podcast like in January of last year. And I can still remember what that podcast was saying while I'm shoveling the driveway, how the snow was falling. It just makes me take in all of the information.
Mm.
And I have a girlfriend who is completely the opposite, who needs silence all the time and to like almost exclusively read and look at things.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, that was kind of a stumbling block in our relationship because I couldn't quite understand why she needed things to be so quiet all the time. But when you realize people experience the world in very different ways based on what their primary way of accessing information is. So how do you help people? And that is neuroscience, right? In education, we talk about learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been evolution and thought around learning styles. We all have access to all of them, just like this. We all have access to all of them. But we do have a primary default setting, I will
Yeah.
call it.
Especially under stress.
Especially under stress, yes. So how do you help people get to know how their brain receives information if they're not sure?
I teach them. So it's a fun little thing that I do. It's one of my favorite parts is identifying whether or not you connect. We call them lead representation systems. And it's, are you more visual or auditory or kinesthetic or something called auditory digital? And it depends on how you take in information. And I can tell, because I've been studying this for the last decade, what somebody mostly is based on their speech patterns, sometimes how they dress, sometimes how they look at the world. So a visual person breathes typically higher in their chest. Their words are faster. They often don't finish their statements because they think, oh, once you've got a picture in it, they just stop talking and they won't finish a sentence.
This is my husband.
Right. They speak faster. They'll interrupt you because they've got the picture in their head. They don't need you to finish the sentence. They get it. They're moved on. And they moved on to the next thing. And you're stumbling. They're going, what happened? And a lot of times they like to sit up and they're very concerned about how they look. So that's typically a visual person. An auditory person speaks a little bit slower than a visual person. They're very concerned about each word that they use. So they're very specific. And the worst thing you can do with an auditory person is cut off their sentence. So a visual and an auditory, that is a match that is challenging because they will constantly be triggering. Like for the visual, the auditory is speaking way too slow. And for the auditory, they're getting interrupted all the time. Then there's the kinesthetic. I'd lead with kinesthetic. It's all about the texture. I want comfy wumpy. I will put on a shirt that feels soft. I will wear comfortable shoes. I speak softly. I want to talk about emotions, and I love to talk about metaphors that you can wrap your hands around to get a really concrete idea of what I'm saying. Yeah, it's all about experience, touch, all of that. That's kinesthetic. And then you've got your auditory digital, who is a subset of auditory, but they're all about the facts. They want to get a sense. They want to take a survey. They want to interpret it. They want to. So my husband leads with auditory digital. And so in those moments when I'm kinesthetic, by the way, kinesthetic and auditory digital are the furthest apart.
Mhm.
So whenever we get a new car, my husband says, "Here's the manual, read it." And I go, no, you read the manual. I'm going to go in and play with the car and push all the buttons and see what happens because I'm kinesthetic. And he's like, no, you can't touch any buttons until you read the manual. I will tell you, we've now been together almost over 18 years, and never has he ever been able to get me to read a manual, and he just gives himself up. It's like, so for example, this morning I bought some jewelry cleaner, and so it comes in a liquid in the bottle, right? And so I said, okay, I want to clean my rings. And he said, okay. And so I took off the lid, and there's the plastic thing. And I said, okay, so I'm going to do that after breakfast. And he goes, well, I'm going to do it now. I said, okay, great. So he puts them in. I said, fantastic. He goes, well, how long do they have to stay in? I said, I don't know. I didn't read the side.
This sounds like a familiar conversation.
So how we know how we are is just sort of by observation and understanding. And there's a whole, again, I do a whole hour-long presentation on this when I'm doing a speaking event or something like that. It's just fun. I just love it. But you got an understanding of who you are based on how you interpret that. And you saw your husband immediately in my description. It's pretty simple.
It is. And so once you understand how you take in information and you start to be able to see it in other folks, it helps the way you are able to interact with them.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
What's the main difference you see in relationships? Because we know at midlife, this is one of the times where people struggle with relationships the most. And so I think that this can be a really powerful tool in your toolkit of how you relate to and interact with the other people in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what happens, according to Dr. Carl Jung, at around the age of 50, women reach their age of individuation, meaning they've given their all to their husbands or their significant others. They've given their all to their children. And then they start to go, well, now what? Who am I? Now that I'm no longer 24/7 in the role of mom and 24/7 in the role of wife. They're just looking for, what about me now? I've given almost 50 years, sometimes 40, sometimes 50, sometimes 60 years into this. What about me? And they start to change the dynamic. And the spouse is going, hang on a second, you're changing the dance here. This is it's been 20, 30, 40 years. What are you doing? And women typically are looking to step into who they really are and understand themselves more. They're starting to take courses. They're starting to read books. They're starting to watch different shows. They're starting to listen to the different podcasts, just trying to figure themselves out. Right? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is certainly my own story. It is the story of most of the women that I talk to, that it is this stage of where we have more time, right? For so long, we have been in the strive mode where you are striving toward something. And then, yeah, you hit that point of I did all the things. I describe it as choreography. Right.
Yep. Yep.
I've done all the choreography, and suddenly the choreography has stopped and I don't have any idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So knowing and understanding the way we understand the world can give us something to hold on to as we are figuring out this new version of ourselves in the world.
Yes. And the work that I do is clearing all the filters so that they can run patterns inside of them and go, oh, yeah, this serves me. Identifying the root problem that's stopping them, rewiring that. I've seen so many different people have different responses. So, when somebody says to me, okay, what can I expect as a result of working with you, Suzanne? I'll go, we'll connect with who you truly are, your true identity, where I'll identify what's stopping you and connect you with your true identity. And often it's well, who is that? Well, we get to make that up. And you get to get more clarity around what you want, what lights you up, rather than what society has told you, what mom and dad have told you, what husband has told you or significant other, what kids are telling you, what other people have told you, what the little girl in grade 1 told you. All of those things, it's like, no, what's important to me? What do I want? And then we go into integrating all the parts of you that might be fractioning out, because we all have parts. We all have parts. Parts are parts of in our unconscious mind that run the show when they get triggered. And they're often very young psychologically in age, because they started before we were 7. And so like when somebody says, wow, all of a sudden she's behaving like a 4-year-old. She is, because the part got engaged. So we integrate those parts, get the lessons that we need to learn from that so that you can go out into the world and have a bigger impact. And most of the people that come to work with me are wanting to have more income as well.
This is a good place to talk about that intersection. So we've talked about understanding the brain and understanding what's happening in our bodies. And the way I understand quantum is the quantum field. It's energy and vibration.
Yes, that's the way I do too. Yeah.
So there is a lot of discovery that is happening around it. There are a lot of really interesting physicists doing fascinating work in this area. And understanding that everything has vibration, right? We at our cells at the very smallest level, everything is actually vibrating, and that has a frequency. So how do we connect with that frequency? When we're talking about income, I can be very, very transparent and say, I've been working towards creating a business for a couple of years, and I will have, at the end of last month, I had my first big keynote, 300 people. It was amazing. It was so great. And so I have this moment and I try to go back and feel into what that felt like and what that vibration was. And then how do I translate that forward to create that frequency that will attract income?
Such a good question. Okay. First of all, clearing out the filters, doing that work, changing the stories inside your head, and integrating parts. Then I believe that the quantum realm, the quantum field, is all possibility and potential. And so what happens is every time we're faced with a decision, if you don't make the decision quickly, like if you just are looking at all the different things that you could decide, what happens is your energy will open up pinpricks or holes inside of the quantum realm. And then your energy flows into each one of those possibilities. And so what often happens is people don't make a decision because they wait for external validation. They wait for other people to decide for them. They wait for other people to tell them all of these things. So they're not making a decision, but they're feeling drained. And it's because they're not making a decision. The quantum realm is open. Your energy is draining. And as soon as you decide, even if it's just a decision for right now, you know what? I'm going to decide to do this. And then you take action towards that. Then your energy can come back to you. Okay. So that's one thing. So decide that you're going to be in that vibration and decide that you can create that. And honest to God, it's the weirdest thing. I've seen it happen over and over again. And it's just like deciding that I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I remember that moment. I was at a pub in university and they said they were giving away Miller mugs. I didn't even drink beer. I'm like, I'm going to win that. And I did. And it's about making the decision. So staying in that vibration, choosing to stay in that vibration. What you're talking about is also anchoring. So you can go back to that and remember that and feel the feelings of being in it. And I have a resource anchor on my ear and I just press it and hold it for up to 5 to 15 seconds and really feel it. And then every time something really positive happens, just keep adding to the resource anchor. And then what happens is when you're about to do something that makes you a little nervous or wondering about whether or not that client's going to come or this is going to happen or the keynote is going to, they're going to pay you this much, then just fire the anchor and get back into that place of, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen. It's lovely living from that place because I will tell you, I lived from the other place, which was fear, worry. I never really experienced anxiety, but I did experience, making things up in the future to be negative, which is the definition of anxiety.
Yeah, yes, it is. And we are told in our materialist world that that's the reality.
Yeah, right?
Right?
And so we just choose not to believe it. Like I have 11 women that I have worked with in the last several years who have all achieved millionaire status per annum. And we've just cleared just done what I've said. We've identified what was stopping them, connected them to their true identity, stepped them into having more courage, and they had more confidence.
Yeah. And isn't that really at the heart of what we are doing at this stage of life?
Yes.
Is reconnecting to that courage, to the confidence, to all of that vibration we had when we were new to the planet, before all of the influences told us what we should or shouldn't be, what is real, what isn't real.
Right?
Right. And reconnecting to that vibration, which is, I love that you said it's a really lovely place to live from. I'm like, yes, that it is.
It really
I
is.
can see that in you.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I had made this year, knowing all of this that I have just beautifully told you, I got myself into trouble. Not real trouble. Like, I've had my most abundant year yet. And I decided that I was going to go to Europe for 22 days in September. And I had the most delightful time. But there was this little voice saying, yeah, you know what? If you're going to do that, you're not going to be building your business. No clients are going to come. You're not going to, that's not a good idea. You're not going to be. And I'm always like, it's okay. I'm going to create clients. Abundance is coming in October. I had 2 current clients that said they were going to renew in October. Everything's going to be fine. But I didn't fully believe it. Sure enough, both the clients who said that they were going to come forward said, can we talk again in January? And I was like, no, okay, yes, of course we could talk in January. And then I made the decision at the beginning of November. I went, okay, no new clients in September, no new clients in October. You got to change something. And so I did. I started to do hypnosis, my own hypnosis, my own meditation. And every morning I got into that place and I reminded myself to get back into that vibration. Within 2 days, a past client reached out and said, can I do a session with you? Sure. And then I remember thinking, oh, it's only one session, but it's still working. Just trust that it's going to work, Suzanne. And then 5 days later, another prospect reached out and she said, hey, I'd like to work with you. You were referred by so-and-so. Okay. And then that client who did the one session, she ended up buying into a second, not a second session, but like a second 6-month package. And then out of the blue, somebody reached out that I had met 3 years ago, out of the blue. And I don't even remember really talking to her. I just remember having like nice chats over dinner. And she reached out and she said, okay, that's it. I'm ready. It's been 3 years. I've been thinking about working you for 3 years. So the energy that I stepped into sent the message out into the field where I could connect with the individuals who needed me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that you have moments too, because I think that that actually can be a barrier for people around like, well, if I do this, then I always have to be perfect at it. And it's recognizing, well, we are still in human flesh.
Yes.
We are still in these human bodies, and it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay to have moments where you have that lower vibrational feeling. It's okay. Knowing that you have a toolkit that can help you move through that. You know, we just recently had to put our sweet Lola, let her return to the universe. And it's been really, really hard. And last night I was just lying on the couch and I looked at my husband and I just said, I'm just sad.
Good.
And he said, me too. And it's okay. And we're just going to be sad. And it's okay. Like those emotions are purposeful as well.
Yes. Because we've got to feel it to heal it.
Yes.
I was talking to a woman who I've known for years yesterday and hope I don't lose it. She just spent Sunday celebrating the life of her 17-year-old son who passed 1 year ago. Yeah. And, my concern for her is always, how are you feeling? What's going on? And she has stepped into a place of, I don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. I am going through my process the way I need to go through my process. And if one more fucking asshole tells me how I need to feel and how I need to grieve, I'm going to reach out and hurt them. Like she means,
Yes.
she doesn't mean that personally, but anyways. And I was like, rock on. Oh,
Yes.
and then I said, and we're going to write a book together because I really want her. I think she has handled this process, this horrific thing with dignity, with grace, with honor, with she's been emoting on Facebook and, she has started a foundation. She's started a movement. She's started a scholarship fund in her son's name, and she is helping others to heal. And I'm just so proud of her and so impressed by the fact that she's really honoring herself. And I know it's because she has done the work to be able to fully understand who she is, and she's showing up. And I really see her as a beacon of light going through this horrific experience.
That's really powerful that when we know ourselves and we have the tools that we need, we can authentically be ourselves through even the hardest lessons that life has for us.
Hmm.
Suzanne, thank you for all of your wisdom. You've shared some really powerful tools that I know people will be able to take away from this episode and start to implement right away. To connect with Suzanne, all of her information will be in the in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. If you feel called to work with Suzanne, please do so. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Lisa. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram at @lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electric acid.